What began as a routine February morning in 2019 became a remarkable day for Jessica. That day, she had dropped a little girl off at preschool and, after saying goodbye, began walking back to her car. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed a small movement. Initially thinking it was just a leaf, Jessica almost ignored it, but the movement caught her attention again. Instinctively, she decided to investigate. On the cold, hard pavement lay a tiny, barely moving creature. Jessica's heart filled with compassion as she realized the animal was in distress. She couldn't tell exactly what it was, but it was clear it needed help. It seemed to have fallen from a nest, possibly the weaker one that had been displaced by stronger siblings. Whatever the case, it was in a dire state, barely breathing. Jessica scanned the area for a nest, but found nothing. Given the strong windstorm the previous day, it was reasonable to assume the animal had been dislodged from its home. The creature didn't appear to be a bird, so Jessica guessed it might be a mouse or a rat. Regardless of its identity, she knew she had to try to rescue it. She rummaged through her handbag for something to keep the tiny creature warm. As an animal lover, she couldn't bear to let it suffer. She wrapped the shivering animal in her scarf and tucked it inside her jersey, hoping her body heat would offer some comfort during the trip home. At that moment, Jessica could only make out that the animal was pinkish, hairless, and featherless. Its eyes were closed, and it lay curled up in a tiny ball, clearly a newborn. It was so small it fit easily into the palm of her hand, and it appeared to be injured. Once home, Jessica set up a warm and soft little bed for the fragile animal. She knew she needed to start feeding it to prevent starvation. Her immediate solution was to use a syringe to administer some milk, hoping it would help the tiny creature survive. Tave, as she decided to call it, gulped down some milk but remained weak and soon fell asleep. Throughout the night, Jessica could hear faint squeaking sounds from Steve. Despite her exhaustion, she barely slept, knowing that newborn animals often struggle to survive their first night away from their mothers. The odds were against Steve, but Jessica clung to hope. Miraculously, 2 days later, Steve was still alive. At birth, Steve weighed just 1.3 ounces, 38 grams, about the weight of a slice of bread or a small USB flash drive. The task of saving this fragile, unknown creature was daunting, but Jessica was determined. Steve required feeding every few hours. Jessica set an alarm to wake up every 3 to 4 hours during the night to feed him. Her nights were restless, and her sleep was interrupted, but she was willing to make the sacrifice for Steve's survival. Despite the sleep deprivation, her commitment to Steve never wavered. Jessica's dedication to Steve was unwavering, and she continued to care for him with love and persistence. Her remarkable compassion and determination transformed an ordinary day into an extraordinary journey of rescue and hope. In February 2019, Jessica's ordinary routine took an extraordinary turn when she found a tiny, frail animal struggling on the pavement. The animal, barely clinging to life, seemed to have fallen from a nest. Overwhelmed with compassion, Jessica decided to rescue it, despite not knowing what type of creature it was. After wrapping the fragile being in her scarf and taking it home, Jessica devoted herself to its care. Balancing her work life with this newfound responsibility proved challenging. Jessica knew she couldn't leave the delicate creature, whom she named Steve, alone at home. Consequently, she brought Steve with her wherever she went. Given his small size, he was easily hidden close to her body, allowing her to go about her daily tasks while ensuring his safety. Jessica approached her boss about her unusual situation. Fortunately, her boss was understanding and allowed her to bring Steve to work. With a supply of milk formula and a secure, cozy spot for Steve to rest, Jessica managed to continue her job while tending to Steve's needs. She meticulously adhered to a feeding schedule, providing milk every few hours and later transitioning to a puppy supplement. She learned these essential care techniques from resources, which proved invaluable in helping Steve survive and thrive. Despite his initial fragility, Steve began to show signs of improvement. His growth, though gradual, was noticeable. Over the course of 2 months, he gained a significant amount of weight, an impressive 2 ounces, 57 grams. While this might seem modest, it was more than double his original weight, marking a substantial recovery from the day Jessica had found him. As Steve grew stronger, he began to explore his surroundings. When Jessica took him outside, he would cling to her legs, seeking comfort and security. His attachment to Jessica was evident, and when he fell asleep, it was clear he was dreaming. Though Jessica could only speculate whether the dreams were pleasant or distressing. Jessica's commitment to Steve was tested when she needed to attend a jiu-jitsu tournament. Unable to take Steve along, she arranged for a sitter to care for him in her absence. This period of separation was difficult for Jessica, who was deeply invested in Steve's well-being. Her dedication to Steve led to her being affectionately dubbed Steve's mom by her growing circle of followers. To commemorate this special bond, she received a bracelet engraved with the phrase, "Steve's mom," a token of pride she wore proudly. Jessica's affection for Steve grew deeper as time passed. She marveled at the progress he made from his initial frail state. Despite his early appearance, which Jessica described as having a face only a mother could love, Steve began to transform. His once pinkish, hairless body started to develop a darker hue, and hair began to grow. The unattractive baby animal was gradually evolving into a handsome young squirrel. The bond between Jessica and Steve was undeniable. She had invested so much in rescuing and nurturing him that he had become more than just a pet. He was a cherished member of her family. Even if Steve had turned out to be a rat, Jessica's love for him would have been unwavering. She had poured her heart into ensuring his survival and health, and this love was reciprocated by the bond they shared. Eventually, Jessica decided it was time for Steve to experience life outside. She began by gradually introducing him to the backyard, allowing him to explore his surroundings while still under her watchful eye. The transition to the wild was a bittersweet moment for Jessica. She had grown deeply attached to Steve, but she knew that for him to fully thrive, he needed to reconnect with his natural instincts. The initial nights after Steve was released were worrisome for Jessica. He didn't return home, and she fretted about his well-being. However, her concerns were soon alleviated when Steve reappeared, seeking food and reassurance. His return signified his successful adaptation to his environment and his ongoing connection with Jessica. Steve's journey from a vulnerable, helpless creature to a resilient, independent squirrel was a testament to Jessica's dedication and love. The sacrifices she made and the effort she invested in his care were well worth it. Steve's story was a powerful reminder of the profound impact one person's compassion can have on a life. Jessica's experience with Steve not only transformed her own life, but also highlighted the importance of kindness and the extraordinary bond that can form between humans and animals.